Okay, activity 2 talks about mixtures. It says polls conducted by Senator Quagmire's campaign manager show that he can win 60% of the rural vote in a state, but only 45% of the urban vote, and 800,000 citizens from the urban areas vote. So for the urban, this many vote. How many voters from rural areas must come to the polls in order for the senator to win 50% of the vote? Okay, so side note before we organize our thoughts the way they want us to fill the chart. He needs, I guess, 50% combined vote. And 60% come from R, let's call them R votes, and only 45% come from the urban or U votes. So 60% come from there, 45% come from there, and he's going to need 50% votes to actually win, I guess. They do tell us that 800,000 citizens for sure are going to come from the urban. And the question is, how many voters must come from the rural, the R1? So just to keep in mind how this is a mixture problem, we got 800,000 here that come, 45% of them are going to vote to get there, and we got 60% of some other number which we don't know. They're asking us to vote a certain way so that he can get 50% of the votes. So now let's go organize our thoughts. It says, let X represent the number of rural voters, because that's what they asked for. How many voters from this area must come to the polls? So X is the number of rural votes, and Y the total number of voters. Keep that in mind. Just side notes before I even organize my chart. So number of voters for the rural, we don't know. That's what I'm supposed to find. That's the number of rural voters. So that's X. Number of urban voters, we do know that. They said that there's 800,000 of them. 800,000 citizens from urban areas. So let's just put that number in here. And total voters, we don't know just yet because we don't know what X is, but they're forcing us to call it Y. So we'll say total voters is Y. If you said that's just X plus 800,000, you would be correct, but we'll call it a Y for now. Percent for Quagmire. Well, the R voters, there's 60% of them that'll vote. So we'll say 0.6 or 0.60, however you want to think of it. And for the urban voters, out of that amount, we know 45%, 0.45, I'll put it in decimal form, is going to vote. So percent, keep that in mind, I'm already putting it in decimal form in my chart. So 45% out of the 800,000, and then the total votes that he needs 50% of the votes, so 0.5 or 0.50. So this is the whole. There's a percentage that votes for him, and the whole times the percentage will give us the part that actually will go to Quagmire. So this guy times this guy, this is our equation. Whole is equal to, the part is equal to the whole times the percentage rate. So multiply these guys, 0.6x, multiply these guys, 0.45, 800,000, and multiply these guys, 0.5y. So all we did was organize our thoughts, but it's important to know what the problem was talking about. He needs 50% of the votes, 60% of the rural people vote for him, 45% of the urban people vote for him, and out of all those total of people, he's going to need 50% votes. So that was the big picture to keep in mind, how this is actually sort of a mixture problem. So add down the first and the third columns to write system of equations. Okay, they didn't really have to tell us that we should kind of have an idea that R plus U, or rural plus urban voters, is going to give me the total voters. So that's going to give me number of voters, X plus 800,000 is going to be the total number of voters. And then also, I know that the final count that he gets for his vote, 60% of those come from the rural people, plus 45% come from the urban people. And he's going to need 50% of that total to win, I guess. So there's my system, an equation in X and Y, another equation in X and Y. Now let's go solve the system. So whatever method we use is fine. I guess we could use the substitution method if we want, because this Y is already isolated. Why not just take that chunk and plug it in here? Once I plugged it in, I just distributed the 0.5 into both pieces, multiplied these two pieces, get the x's on the left, and get the numbers on the right. And then I have 0.1x, divide both sides by 0.1, and it looks like I get 400,000. And I have to go back and answer the question, because it said, how many rural voters will he need, or how many of them must come to the polls? Well, the number of rural voters for me was X, and that's all the question asked for, nothing else. And I have my X value, so I can go ahead and answer the question. The senator will need 400,000 rural voters to come to the polls.